You ever feel like your life is perfectly fine, then suddenly someone drops a storm on your doorstep? That's exactly what happened to me when my family decided to hijack my address for their wedding invitations, without even asking me first. It started on a regular Tuesday morning. I was sipping my coffee, scrolling through emails, and half listening to the quiet hum of my refrigerator when there was a knock at the door. Not unusual, right? Except when I opened it, a delivery guy stood there with a giant box in his arms. "Delivery for the Johnson wedding?" he said, glancing at the label. My brows knitted together. Wedding? I wasn't planning a wedding. I wasn't even dating anyone. "That's not mine," I said quickly. The man shrugged, set the box down, and pointed at the address. My exact apartment number. My exact name wasn't written, but my street address? Dead on. I signed anyway because he looked annoyed and I figured maybe it was a mistake. But when I carried the box inside and opened it, my stomach dropped. Inside were wedding invitations. Hundreds of them. Cream-colored envelopes with gold lettering, each one neatly addressed. And right there, at the bottom of every single one, was my address, as the RSVP return address. My heart started racing. I grabbed one envelope, ripped it open, and scanned the card. It was for my cousin Sarah's wedding. Her big, fancy wedding that everyone in the family had been gossiping about for months. And apparently, my apartment had been chosen as the official RSVP center. At first, I laughed nervously, thinking maybe it was just a small batch. A mistake. But as I checked the shipping receipt, my eyes widened. 200 invitations. All with my home address printed on them. I immediately called Sarah. She picked up on the second ring, sounding stressed, like she always did when wedding planning was mentioned. "Hey, Sarah," I started cautiously. I just got a box of your wedding invitations. They all have my address on them." There was silence for a moment. Then she said, casual as ever, "Oh yeah, I meant to tell you. It's just easier this way. So all the RSVPs don't get lost at my parents' house. Yours is quieter." I nearly dropped the phone. "Easier for who?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. "For me," she replied matter-of-factly. "You're home more often. You can just collect them, maybe sort them, and let me know who's coming. No big deal." No big deal. 200 envelopes landing in my mailbox, strangers sending letters to my place, and I had to sort them? I took a deep breath. "Sarah, you didn't even ask me. You just printed my address on 200 invitations." "Well," she said with a sharp little laugh, "if I asked, you might have said no. And I really need your help with this. It's family. Come on, don't be difficult." My jaw clenched. This wasn't a favor. This was an ambush. I tried to argue, but she brushed me off and hung up before I could finish. At first, I told myself I wouldn't get dragged into it. I'd just toss the RSVPs back at her whenever they came. But within 2 days, the nightmare began. Every time I checked the mailbox, it was stuffed. Envelopes crammed together, some bent, some nearly ripped. Guests had started sending RSVPs back immediately. Some even wrote long notes. A few sent checks. One even sent a package, some kind of gift basket. And all of it was piling up in my tiny apartment. The worst part, strangers started showing up. One Saturday morning, I was in my pajamas when someone knocked at my door. I peeked out and saw an elderly couple holding an invitation. When I opened, they smiled warmly. "Hi, we're here for the Johnson wedding RSVP. We thought it would be nice to deliver it in person." I froze, trying to process the insanity. They thought my home was the official address for the wedding. That night, I called Sarah again. "This has to stop," I said firmly. "People are showing up at my door. Do you understand how crazy this is?" She sighed dramatically. "Oh, don't be so uptight. It's only until the wedding. Just collect everything and bring it to me when you visit. You act like this is ruining your life." I wanted to scream. But instead, I decided to stay quiet. If she thought this wasn't ruining my life, maybe I'd show her just how wrong she was. Because a plan was already forming in my mind. As the days went by, more and more RSVPs filled my living room. Stacks of envelopes, boxes, notes, checks, it was chaos. But instead of stressing, I started keeping track of everything. I logged names, numbers, and little details people included. Some people wrote things like, "Can't wait to see the venue," or "Thanks for inviting us, Sarah." Others had complaints about the food choices. Some even sent personal messages that probably weren't meant for my eyes. And with every new envelope, my patience shrank. Then one day, I got something that changed everything. A thick envelope with Sarah's future in-laws' address on it. Inside was a check for $5,000. A wedding gift. And guess who it was made out to? Not Sarah. Not her fiancé. But blank. No name written. I stared at it for a long time, my hands trembling. I wasn't a thief. But the disrespect, the nerve, the way Sarah had shoved me into this without a thought, it lit a fire inside me. I wasn't going to steal the money. But suddenly, I knew exactly how to turn this disaster into payback. I grabbed my notebook, sat down at the table, and started writing. Names, details, timelines. If Sarah wanted to dump the entire wedding RSVP system on me without asking, then fine. I'd play along. But this time on my terms. And let's just say, she had no idea the storm that was about to hit her wedding. I didn't sleep much that night. My brain kept circling around the same thought. Sarah dumped this responsibility on me without permission, but now I had the power. 200 guests. 200 letters. 200 tiny windows into her wedding. The more I thought about it, the more it felt less like a burden and more like an opportunity. The next morning, I sorted through the envelopes carefully. I stacked the yes in one pile, the no's in another, and the complicated ones, people who asked questions or had special requests, in a third pile. Sarah probably thought I was just being her unpaid secretary. But what she didn't know was that I was adding a fourth pile. A very special one. That pile was for people who had complaints. One man had scribbled in bold ink, "Vegetarian option? If not, count us out." Another woman wrote, "Please seat us away from the Thompsons." Someone else added, "I hope there won't be kids running around. We hate noisy weddings." Petty demands. Awkward comments. Tiny landmines that Sarah had no idea were headed her way. And I was going to make sure those landmines exploded. Over the next week, my apartment turned into what looked like a wedding office. Letters scattered everywhere, sticky notes marking details, my notebook filling with names and notes. Sarah called me twice, asking if I was keeping up. I told her yes, and she barely thanked me before rushing off to talk about flower arrangements or dresses. She didn't suspect a thing. Then came the moment I'd been waiting for. Sarah texted me, "Bring me all the RSVPs this weekend. Need to finalize the seating chart." I smiled at the screen. Perfect. I carefully packaged everything up into 4 neat folders. But instead of just handing them over, I swapped some. The guests who wanted vegetarian meals? I made sure Sarah never saw those notes. She'd think everyone was fine with the menu. The people who demanded to be seated away from others? I left those requests out too. She'd seat them together without a clue. And the really touchy complaints? I saved them in my special folder, tucked away. When I drove to her house that weekend, Sarah greeted me like I was some delivery person. "Oh, thank God," she said, grabbing the box from my arms. "You're a lifesaver. I was worried you'd screw something up." I bit my tongue. The arrogance dripping from her words only made me more confident in my plan. For the next 2 weeks, the drama unfolded like a play I had written myself. Sarah started getting calls. Lots of them. "Why wasn't I given a vegetarian meal option?" one guest complained. "Why did you seat me next to the Thompsons when I specifically asked not to?" another yelled. "I told you I couldn't come if kids were allowed. Now what do you expect me to do?" someone else snapped. Sarah was losing her mind. She called me frantically one night, her voice sharp with panic. "Did you mess something up? People keep calling and saying I ignored their requests." I feigned innocence. "Really? I just gave you the RSVPs exactly as they came. Maybe they're just being picky." Her silence on the phone was thick with frustration. She couldn't prove anything. Meanwhile, I still had my special folder. And inside it, one particular gem. The blank $5,000 check from her future in-laws. I hadn't cashed it, of course. But I knew exactly what I was going to do with it. The wedding day arrived like a storm cloud. My family was buzzing with excitement, but I kept my cool. I put on my suit, tucked the special folder under my arm, and headed to the venue. It was stunning, an outdoor garden with string lights, white chairs, soft music. Guests mingled, sipping champagne. But beneath the pretty surface, tension already simmered. I overheard whispers. "Why are we seated next to them? There's no vegetarian food. What am I supposed to eat?" Did she really ignore my RSVP note? Sarah was flitting around in her dress, trying to smile but clearly unraveling. Her perfect day was cracking at the edges, and I hadn't even played my final card yet. During the reception, as dinner was being served and chaos grew louder, I slipped away to where the gift table was stacked high with envelopes and packages. I opened my folder and placed the $5,000 check right on top, in plain sight. But this time, I had filled it in. Not with Sarah's name. Not with her fiancé's. But with the name of a charity I supported. I sealed it in an envelope, labeled neatly, from the Johnson family's kind guests. It looked perfectly innocent. Then I returned to my seat, sipped my drink, and waited. As the night wore on, Sarah's frustration exploded. Guests were bickering about seats, some refused to eat, and one elderly aunt scolded her loudly for ignoring everyone's wishes. Her face turned red as she tried to keep her composure. Finally, when the gift opening began, Sarah's eyes lit up as she reached the check. I watched her smile freeze, confusion clouding her face. Who made this out to a charity?" she stammered, holding it up. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone asked loudly, "Wait, you donated $5,000 instead of keeping it." Sarah's face went pale. Her fiancé's parents exchanged bewildered looks. And I just sat back, pretending to be surprised, sipping my drink, hiding the grin that wanted to break free. The night was far from over, but my plan had only just begun to unravel everything she thought she controlled. The air grew heavy after the check incident. Guests whispered louder, some even laughing at the awkwardness. Sarah's smile faltered, and she shot nervous glances at her in-laws, who looked like they were holding back questions. Her father-in-law leaned over and muttered, not as quietly as he thought, "That money was for you too, not some random charity." I could practically see Sarah's blood pressure spike. She tried to laugh it off, saying, "Oh, maybe it was just a mistake. We'll figure it out later." But the damage was done. People noticed, and the murmurs didn't stop. Dinner went from tense to downright uncomfortable. At one table, two families began arguing about being seated together. At another, a woman refused to eat because her vegetarian request had been ignored. Kids were crying, someone spilled wine, and the atmosphere was unraveling fast. I sat there quietly, enjoying every second of the chaos, knowing exactly how much of it I had orchestrated. Then came the speeches. The maid of honor tried her best to lighten the mood, cracking jokes about Sarah's bossy personality. People laughed, but not kindly. It was the kind of laughter that carried truth. Then Sarah's new brother-in-law took the mic and made a snide remark about how communication seems to be a weak spot in this family. The crowd chuckled, but Sarah's face burned red. I knew this was my moment. I slipped away, not to the bathroom like it looked, but to my car parked outside. I grabbed the special folder again. Inside were copies of the pettiest, most dramatic RSVP notes, the ones I had hidden from Sarah. And I had made sure to bring them with me. When I returned, the DJ had started some soft background music while guests mingled. I slid one of the copies onto the dessert table, just casually tucked under a plate. Within minutes, someone found it. "Wait, what's this?" a woman's voice rang out. She picked it up and read aloud. "Please don't seat us near the Thompsons. We can't stand them." Gasps filled the air. Heads turned. The Thompsons were right there at the next table. "Who wrote that?" Mr. Thompson barked, standing up. Nobody admitted it, of course. But then someone else found another note I had slipped near the gift table. "We won't attend if kids are there. They ruin everything." Parents glared instantly, offended. Voices rose. Guests argued. Some even started pointing fingers. The wedding was turning into a battleground, exactly as I had planned. Sarah tried to intervene, shouting for everyone to calm down. But it was too late. The notes spread like wildfire. People accused her of ignoring them. Others accused each other of being rude. The entire reception was falling apart before her eyes. And I was just one step away from my final move. Later that night, when Sarah finally cornered me, her face was red and sweaty under her heavy makeup. "Did you know about those notes?" she hissed. I widened my eyes innocently. "Notes? You mean the RSVPs? I gave you everything I had." She narrowed her eyes. She wanted to blame me, but she couldn't prove anything. "Not here. Not now." And that's when her fiancé's mother stepped in. "Sarah," she said coldly, "I don't understand how something so simple turned into such a disaster. First the seating, then the food, now this check situation? Did you even read your RSVPs?" Sarah stammered, desperate. I did. I swear. Her mother-in-law shook her head. "This is not a good start." Her words sliced through the room. Guests went quiet, watching the exchange like it was part of the entertainment. Sarah looked like she might cry, but she forced a smile and excused herself. That's when I knew I had her cornered. But I wasn't finished yet, because the last piece of my revenge was already in motion. Earlier, I had mailed one of the leftover invitations, the ones with my address on them, to Sarah's fiancé's ex-girlfriend. How did I get her address? From one of the nosy RSVP notes where someone mentioned her by name. A little social media digging did the rest. I didn't expect her to actually show up. But as the night dragged on, I saw her walk through the doors in a sleek red dress, her eyes locked straight on the groom. The room fell silent. Sarah froze, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Her fiancé went pale, then flushed red. Guests started whispering furiously. And I sat back, watching the storm hit its peak. The ex walked right up to the couple, smiled sweetly, and said, "Congratulations. I just had to come see this for myself." Sarah nearly fainted. And that was when the real screaming began. The room erupted the second the ex showed up. Guests whispered loudly, some even laughed in disbelief, and Sarah's face twisted into something between rage and humiliation. "Who invited you?" Sarah spat, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. The ex tilted her head, smiling innocently. "I got an invitation. With this address." She held up the cream-colored card with my address neatly printed on the back. Gasps rippled through the room again. The groom tried to grab her arm, mumbling, "You shouldn't be here." But the ex yanked free, her voice ringing out clear and strong. "Oh, relax. I'm not here to ruin anything. I just wanted to see if you actually went through with it." It was like tossing gasoline on a bonfire. Guests started buzzing, cameras flashing, phones recording. Sarah's perfect fairy tale wedding had turned into a reality show meltdown. I stood in the back, expression neutral, heart pounding with satisfaction. She had no idea that I had mailed that invitation myself. Sarah stormed out of the room, her dress swishing angrily behind her. The groom followed, but not before the ex smirked and blew him a little kiss. Half the room cheered, half the room gasped. I slipped out too, quietly, and found Sarah in the hallway, pacing like a wild animal. Her eyes locked on me instantly. "You," she hissed. "Did you do this? Did you invite her?" I shrugged. "Why would I? I don't even know her." Her face crumpled, torn between suspicion and the crushing weight of everything else falling apart. She couldn't prove a thing. But then her voice broke. "You've ruined everything. My RSVPs, my reception, my wedding. It's all a mess because of you." I took a step closer, my voice calm but cutting. "No, Sarah. You ruined everything when you decided my life was just a storage box for your wedding. You printed my address on 200 invitations without asking. You turned my home into your office. You disrespected me. This is just the result of your choices." She stared at me, trembling, mascara smudging down her cheeks. For once, she had no clever comeback. The reception limped on after that, but the mood was destroyed. Guests fought, rumors flew, and Sarah and her new husband barely spoke to each other for the rest of the night. By the time the cake was cut, half the guests had left early, muttering about how disorganized and embarrassing it all was. And me? I went home, sat on my couch, and laughed until my stomach hurt. In the weeks that followed, the fallout spread. Sarah's in-laws never forgot the fiasco. They brought it up constantly, pointing to the wasted money, the bad reputation, the humiliation. The video clips of the ex crashing the wedding even floated around on social media, getting shared by people who loved a juicy disaster. Sarah tried to blame me, of course. She told everyone I sabotaged her wedding. But when people asked how I could possibly have been responsible for seating charts, catering, or her fiancé's ex showing up, she had no answers. The truth was simple. She handed me all the power when she used my address without asking. And I used it. The cherry on top came a month later. I got a letter in the mail, another check. This time from Sarah herself for all the trouble she caused me. A measly $200, scribbled with a half-hearted apology note. I didn't cash it. I pinned it on my fridge as a trophy. Because revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just sitting back, letting someone drown in the chaos they created, and giving the water a gentle stir. And every time I walk past that check, I remember the look on her face as her perfect wedding crumbled. A look that told me I had won. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel.